Our topic this month is the walk in abundance. From our reading today, read by Rhonda, Ernest Holmes speaks of practicing the truth. He says, the one who makes the attempt, much is guaranteed. As practitioners of science of mind, we practice. How do we practice? Well, we have practices such as visualization, forgiveness, gratitude, affirmations, and more. Today, four of our practitioners will give their take on how their daily practices have brought more abundance into their lives. Carrie Sherman will speak on the practice of spiritual mind treatment. Peter Waring will speak on the practice of meditation. Fran Peck will speak to the practice of visioning. And Reverend Mary Jane Hyde will speak of tithing. And now, without any further ado, here is Carrie Sherman.
Thank you, Jean. Good morning again. So you just experienced prayer. It is a core practice principle in the science of mind and in many spiritual philosophies. What makes prayer in our spiritual philosophy a little unique is that, first of all, we call it spiritual mind treatment. If you are new to this philosophy, if you are new today as a guest, don't let this terminology kind of confuse you or scare you. It does sound kind of woo-woo, doesn't it? Spiritual mind treatment. What am I doing to my mind? Good things. You're doing good things to your mind. Ernest Holmes, the founder of the science of mind, of religious science, in the textbook, the Science of Mind textbook, at page 152, there's a couple paragraphs entitled, "Prayer is essential to happiness." And I will quote one sentence from that says, "Through prayer, we recognize a spiritual law that has always existed and put ourselves in alignment with it." So when I talk about spiritual mind treatment or prayer, how do we put ourselves in alignment with it? Well, the way we pray, it's a 5-step positive prayer, and each step is in a certain space. It is a 1 through 5 step, and it's put in that specifically to align the person who's praying, their consciousness, with that law. So there's the recognition step. And if you heard me in my prayer, I said, God is all there is. There's one power. That's recognizing. That's the truth. There's only one life, and that life is God. Step 2 is unification. If there's one life and it's God, then, that's me. I'm God too. I'm a divine being. Step 3 is the realization step, and that is the step where you're going to speak your truth, what you are wanting to manifest in your life, feel in your life, do in your life, a goal in your life. But it is stated in a positive, present statement. I am radiantly healthy. I am permanently prosperous. And then the 4th step is thanksgiving. Thankful, grateful that this is already done. As I've spoken it, the law has heard it. It is already done. I'm so grateful. And so now I'm going to release it. Release it, let it go. Very important to release and let it go. If it comes back, if you have a challenge or a worry and it's coming back, then say another prayer. Ernest Holmes, I understand, stories being told about him, that he would pace in his office and continue to pray until his consciousness was in alignment with the truth. Jesus said, pray without ceasing, right? We're always talking to spirit because we are connected to that, and spirit provides this abundant universe, always provides. And so how, me as a practitioner, how is prayer, how does that show up in my life as abundance? Well, I think If I say abundance, many of you just automatically may think about financial prosperity. And that's, yes, that's abundance. But there's abundance in so many other ways. So many other ways to be realized, lived, experienced. So for me personally, when I release a prayer, if I'm saying a prayer for myself mainly, but also when I pray for another person, but when that release step, it's almost like this calmness floods over me, this sense of well-being, that I have, that the universe has heard me, that spirit has my back, that it is being, my words of power have been acted upon. I can take a deep breath and let it go. So as I am calm, my physical being, I'm healthier, I'm not worrying. Worry causes physical symptoms, I believe. I am calm, I am radiating at a higher level within my body, within my DNA, within my cells. I am healthier. And I'm also able to be open. I've just released a prayer. I am now open to noticing, being aware. What is the universe telling me? How do I need to act next? What is divine right action telling me to do? As I rise, because there's one energy, everyone and everything rises with me. Every time I say a prayer, I come home. That is that alignment that was spoken about. I am in the loving arms of the one. I am safe if I need to feel safe. I am protected if I need that. I am empowered if I need to feel that. I come home every single time, pray without ceasing. There is that divine energy that is always there, waiting to be called upon and used for the highest and best good, for you, for whoever you're praying for life in general. Getting back to abundance. Yes, financial prosperity. I'm very blessed. I have meaningful work that I love. I'm able to meet my financial obligations. Yes, when I pray for financial prosperity, I see that in my life. And I'm so grateful for that. I always have enough. And sometimes I have more than enough, more than I ever thought. You know, I check my checking account and it's like, oh, okay, well, wow, that's a little bit of a surprise. It's growing. That's beautiful. I've been able to manifest an August vacation. You know, speaking of the upcoming workshop with Ray Sherrill, you know, the world is opening up. It was like, I need to kind of get out of town and experience something new. It's been a long time and I love to travel. So I'm going to a cooler climate. And it's like I asked the universe, you know, bless me. And I know that I am sitting in a cooler climate, enjoying friends, family, or even just by myself, but I have an opportunity fell right in my lap. And so I'll have 2 weeks away in August. Paying off a loan earlier than expected. So as I move and have my being in this oneness, all things come to fruition that I have envisioned or spoken about or prayed about. And believe me, as a practitioner, sometimes I can't get there on my own. So I ask a practitioner to pray for me and hold that truth for me. I've received inquiries and have prayed with 3 new people that I've never met before. They found me some way and we did telephone spiritual counseling. It was wonderful. And, you know, as I rise, everyone rises. So I hope I was a blessing to them as well. If you take the foundations class, you're going to learn more about how to say, put together, pray aright, as Ernest Holm would say, how to do a spiritual mind treatment. But regardless, prayer works. If that 5-step is a little bit too much for you now or whatever, just pray. Talk to God. Prayers are always answered. This I know to be the truth. Prayer works in my life. I'm abundantly blessed in all ways by staying with the one, keeping my eye on the one. Our next speaker I am thrilled to introduce is practitioner Pete Waring.
Good morning. I want to share with you how my meditation practice brought so much abundance in my life. For me, meditation is foundational to any of our work as practitioners of science of mind. And whether we are licensed or not, we are practitioners. The reading from Ernest Holmes makes it pretty clear that this is about practicing the principles. In the reading, Holmes promised that the one who makes the attempt, much is guaranteed. So my spiritual journey restarted Memorial Day weekend in 2007. I was attending a yoga retreat, mainly for stress management, and we were asked to keep a journal. And I still have it. And I read back from time to time. And looking back, I was in a very dark place in almost all segments of my life. I was broke, deeply in debt. My relationship had ended, and I was really very unhappy. And I was looking for something. And during the retreat weekend, I'm such a reader that I picked up a book from the retreat library. And you probably all know it. It's called Autobiography of a Yogi by Yogananda. And, you know, it has lots of meanings for a lot of people. But for me, the message for me was that there was a power in meditation. And he describes often how in meditation, how he went into nirvana and bliss. His descriptions were so compelling that I clearly remembered saying to myself, I want some of that. It was an internal cry for peace. I just wanted the feeling of peace and love, of joy, of something that was different from the worry and stress that I was carrying around 24/7, even if it was just for a moment. So that desire moved me to learn meditation. And it eventually, within a few months, actually brought me to Creative Living Fellowship. And it started out with baby steps, 10, 15, 20 minutes a day. But within days, my attention at work began to improve and the stress got a little bit better. And it was noticeable. So that alone propelled me to continue with my practice. And so I went on with that. I took classes at CLF. I went to workshops and retreats. And then in 2015, I actually did it. I popped into nirvana. Not once, but 3 times over the course of a weekend. And this is where the abundance comes in. In our classes, we always talk about replacing the thoughts of lack with the thoughts of abundance, and replacing the feeling of lack with the feeling of abundance. But for many of us, we have never really thought or felt abundance, even if we were born into a family of means. If you don't know what abundance feels like, how can I replace the feeling of lack with abundance? And that's the place where I was at. Well, when I popped into nirvana, that gave me the experience of abundance. Now, there are many feelings that are experienced during this moment, but basically it's a ginormous feeling of love. The feeling was so strong, and this feeling was so strong that I just kept feeling love of life, love of myself, love of my friends, love of my enemies even, and so forth. It just kept pouring out of me to the point of tears. And at the time I felt and kept repeating, I have everything I need. I want for nothing, and I am whole. The feeling was so strong. This was the feeling of abundance that I could not find. Finally, I had some of that. And of course, an experience like this is something that you never forget. So in my way of explaining things, I like the quantum model. I like to explain it as this. I had an energetic upgrade. I began to vibrate at a higher frequency, and my energy signature had changed. The energy signature now contained a higher level of love, of gratitude, of compassion, all those positive things. So I like to think of it as my abundance thermostat had been dialed up. How was it life changing? Well, within days, I noticed that I was more aware of the beauty around me. Colors were more vivid. People were friendlier, and so was I. Life was my life became easier. Work got better. And I even rekindled a relationship, and now we are married. And then when the COVID pandemic shut all of us down, I actually had savings this time around to carry me through. Now, if that isn't abundance, what is? So in concluding, I want to say that I have everything I need and I want for nothing. So now I would like to introduce to you practitioner and our animal chaplain, Fran Peck.
Good morning. I'm going to speak about the spiritual practice of visioning and how it has informed my walk in abundance. Visioning is a meditative practice, and you've heard already about some of the mindfulness and meditative practices, spiritual practices that we do. Visioning deepens us to be open to capture God's vision for our lives, for an event, for a process, anything really. I serve on the CLF Vision Corps, and I've visioned with various boards at CLF, and I attend the Life Purpose Visioning facilitated by Reverend Dr. Sherry every other Tuesday. And as a spiritual practice, I even vision for God's highest idea for the day, most mornings, just as part of my morning meditation and prayer. So I use visioning because I find it reveals areas of focus. I find it reveals areas of emphasis and areas of release. It deepens me into the conscious awareness that God is always visioning for our lives, for our circumstances, our events. It deepens my awareness that God is truly in and expressing as everything. And I found this especially useful and comforting during the pandemic and the lockdown. So in visioning, there are 5 primary questions that we ask, each with some sub-questions. We allow for quiet meditation between each question, and then we record what came up for us. For some of us, we get images. For others, we get words or phrases. And so I'll go over the questions briefly. The first question we ask is, what is God's vision? What is God's idea for whatever we're visioning for? My life, the day, an event. What is God's highest idea? Sub-questions to this question are, what does God's vision look like? How does it feel? Does it have a taste, a smell, a sound? And then question 2, we ask, what must I become to be in alignment with God's vision? What is my role? How must I change or grow to be in alignment? Then we ask, what must I release to be in alignment with God's vision? What must I let go? Question 4 is, what must I embrace to be in alignment with God's vision? What spiritual qualities must I embrace? And I'll remind us that spiritual qualities are things like love, peace, peace of mind, joy, harmony, wholeness, health. And then finally we ask, what else do I need to know? Are there any next steps? Anything else I need to know to proceed in this? And so like any spiritual practice, it becomes more a part of you the more you do it, the more you practice it. And I find visioning is very powerful. It opens one up to receive and deepen into an ever increasing and expanding awareness of God's vision. I find it to be a time to consciously take the time to be aware of that power and presence that is always and in all ways guiding and directing our lives and events. A time to quiet the world and listen to that still small voice, to tap into that inner knowing and inner knower. When we practice frequent visioning, we look for trends in the vision, that is, reoccurring concepts or themes, areas where God is showing up, spiritual qualities that are seeking to be expressed. So it won't surprise those of you who know me to know that many of my God's visions are nature or animal related. God speaks to us in the language we know. Every now and again, I'll get an eagle soaring over a meadow. I once had God's vision as puppies, lots of puppies crawling all over me. What did it feel like? Heaven with fur. What did it smell like? Puppy breath. Often when something comes up for me in visioning, I see it in real life shortly after that. I once saw hot air balloons, and within a couple of days, we had hot air balloons in the North Valley. One theme that kept presenting involved releasing a couple of wire dog crates that I hadn't used in a couple of years. As I came out of my morning meditation a couple of weeks ago and turned on the news, they were starting to evacuate folks because of the wildfires. And Arizona Humane Society put out a request for gently used wire crates and blankets for evacuees animals. I loaded them that day in about a dozen blankets and released them. And finally, as an example of how visioning has informed my walk in abundance, I have only to look around at the love and support of the CLF community and what we have all accomplished together. Thank you. And I invite you to join me for visioning this Tuesday at 6:30. Love and blessings. And now it is my great pleasure and honor to introduce Reverend Mary Jane Hyde.
Good morning, CLF. I'm talking about tithing today. And so there's basically three things I want to talk about. There's tithing, what it is, tithing, what it really is, and then there is how to dive into it, if you want to. So I don't know about you, but where I was raised, tithing was really a four-letter word. It was right up there, like, don't you ever use that word in my house. And that's what I grew up with. There was a lot of negative kind of connotation that went along with the word tithing. And so I had some things to overcome when I started to realize that it's really a spiritual practice. It's a spiritual principle. And so tithing was still, the word itself was a bit of a problem, and the practice itself was a bit of a problem to me. For a while after I'd been attending religious science and hearing more about how it's a spiritual practice. But I did understand the principle of tithing, even though I didn't call it that. It's really more about the flow, what you put into the flow of life. And what you put into the flow of life is generally what comes back to you. And I understood that. I was in business for myself, and I did things that a lot of people in my business would say, I'll never do that. I'm never going to just help somebody. If they aren't ready to purchase, I'm not bothering with them, that kind of thing. And I didn't follow that. I just went by my guidance when I worked with people and said, if I feel guided to work with someone, then I'm going to do it. And even if they aren't going to purchase, maybe they aren't, but you know what? I'm getting so much out of this experience. First of all, I'm learning about a person. I'm getting to know a person. I'm learning about the product in the market while I'm doing this. And it just, I saw so much positive coming back out of that I wasn't going to refuse to do something simply because there wasn't a paycheck at the end of it. And what I knew even while I was doing this, was that it would come back to me somehow. I didn't know. I said, I'm putting good things into the flow, so it's going to come back to me. It's not a 1-for-1. It's not like putting something in the bank and then going and making your withdrawal when you're ready to. It's just what it is it's a trust in the divine flow of life. It's trust in God. It's a trust in the energy of life, whatever you call it, spirit, however we name that, it's a trust in that flow, because our abundance, our good really comes from that source, not from a particular person, place, or thing, right? So I would just do these things and knew that I was receiving good. And in one case, I worked with a person for, I think it was almost 2 years. They did a purchase, but the whole time I was learning so much, and I enjoyed the company, that it was just a good experience. And then there was something that happened during this process, and it was something that caused me to step up in a way that I never had before, and be in a feeling of empowerment, and I had to, because I had to do it for this customer, and I gained so much from that. I mean, that was an experience that just put me in a different place forever, and how can I put a dollar value on that, really? I mean, there isn't. And so, that what I said was, it's the energy with which we do it. So really, tithing it's literally, if you look it up in the dictionary, it would probably say 10% of income, that you give to church or something, right? And it is 10%. And some people, everybody does it differently. I go by the principle of it's 10% of my gross. And actually, I learned something from Ray Sherrill from one of our prosperity classes, that you can tithe at the amount you want to be earning. And so I'm doing that now. I'm tithing at a higher rate because I want to increase my earning rate. And so it literally is 10%. Now, some people tithe at 10% of their net. Some people do some configuration of that. Other people, honestly, when I was teaching a prosperity class, which I used to teach Keys to the Kingdom a lot, there were times when people were so frightened, so afraid, almost to fear, to the point of not being able to even think about it. I said, let's do 10% of something. Where can we do 10% of something in their world of income? And they came up with something that was a stretch. They didn't, but it was not so much that they were just in terror about it. Because if we're tithing and we're in terror about it, what are we putting into the flow of life? We're putting fear. And that's not what we want to put into the flow of life. We want to give freely with no strings, just at peace, and so we have to be able to give at a level where we feel that we can. But we give to our spiritual home because that's where we're being spiritually fed. And so that's why it's, people will say, it's in 10% of your income to your church, because we're getting spiritually fed there. And this is a spiritual principle. So it makes sense to keep that flow going, right? And so it's much more than just about money. It's about the spirit in which we do things, and and it's totally not just about money. I mean, it's how we go about our day, how we, if we use our spiritual practices, the 3 that we've already talked about, and there's many more, it's how we go about our day, and what do we do? How do we treat people? How do we act? Do we show up in a way that we feel good about? Because how we behave, what we do today is our is where we're living tomorrow, right? I mean, I think about, creating a bunch of conflict in my life, which is easy to do. I mean, you can do it. But what I create in terms of conflict today becomes the world I live in tomorrow, right? So, I try to act from a different place. And so that's about putting what you put into the flow. If you put in peace, if you put in loving energy, if you put in caring, that's what, whatever you want to focus on is whatever is going to go into the flow. And then that is also what comes back around to you. And like I said, it's not a 1-for-1, and it's not definitely if I tithe and do this that, I'll never have a dark day in my life. That's not it. It's just generally what we put out is what's going to return to us. And Ernest Holmes, just about everything I said could be found in one of the books we've recently studied. But Ernest talks about in this thing called You, or this thing called Life, about how, we manifest at the level that we're thinking at, and the level of our beliefs and our feelings about what we're about situations. So it's really, that's what we're putting into the flow. I mean, that's what he's saying. What we're thinking, what we're feeling, that's what's going into the flow, and that's what manifests back to us. For me, do we understand what tithing is? It's not just about money, but it is indeed 10%. It's important, I think, to know where you're at when you're tithing, and to know if you're stretching beyond what is comfortable for you. What are your feelings when you do this practice? If you're a practice that's new to you, it may be uncomfortable, and you may be stretching to do it, which I was when I first started. This was way back in time when Edwin Gaines came to CLF, I think the first time, and she talked, and I said, okay, this is my day that I'm going to start. I just made the commitment while she was speaking, and it was a stretch for me. It was a little scary, but I said, I'm just doing it. I'm going to do 10% of my gross pay, and I said, I don't know how, but I'm going to do it. So I just did it. The rest of it wasn't really up to me. I just went and wrote the check, and I released it with a little bit of concern, but I was in prayer while I was doing it. This is all good. This is all good. I'm putting into God's flow, and it really worked out. I don't know how. I don't even know how I paid my bills that I was supposed to be paying, but I did. And then at the place where I worked, I got a promotion, I got a raise. I just kept, and it never really, it just kept going. And this was over 20 years ago. So for most of over 20 years, my practice has been to tithe on my gross income. That's for me. But it has empowered me. I have a feeling of empowerment when it comes to finances, which I didn't when I first started. And so that is what I got out of the spiritual practice of tithing. I feel very free and very happy when I can just freely give to, for me, it's CLF. That's where I'm going to give my tithe. And so it has definitely worked for me in my life. I feel empowered. I feel free, and I, it's not just about money. It's about just feeling faith in the source of life, and knowing that it will come to me however it needs to come to me. I am in alignment with who I am, and I feel more like that today than I ever have. Like, I'm really in alignment with who I truly am, which is the divine individualized expression that is God, that is within me, that is wanting to express through me. And there is a lot of freedom and empowerment in that. So I think that's what I wanted to say about tithing. And so I think now we will go into prayer. We're going to take all of these beautiful words of wisdom from the divine source that come as it spoke through each of us, and we'll take those into prayer. Okay. So I'm going to breathe, as Reverend Sherry says, breathe. And with this breath, I know that I'm breathing in just the energy, the life, the power, the peace, the harmony, the joy that is God, that God energy. It is the flow of life, and that is what I'm breathing in. And as I release the breath, I'm releasing anything that is unlike that, any concerns, any thoughts, any energy that is unlike those qualities of God that I already spoke. And so as I go into this space of divine love and divine power, I know that each person here is also one with that divine energy, one with that divine power. Everybody is empowered through that individualized expression that is them, that is God, that is within them. And in that place, there is no disease, there's no disharmony, there's no unhappiness. Although on the surface, in our human lives, there is, or can be. Doesn't have to be, there can be. And so what I accept is that the divine qualities of God, the love and peace and harmony and understanding and divine flow is what is called forth. And it quiets that which is unlike itself. It releases it. It replaces it. And that which is unlike those qualities falls away. It has no place here because the divine is filling that space. And so I accept, I know that there is on a human level pain, there is illness, there's suffering. And so I want to speak to that. I want to accept that anybody who is facing a health challenge, a relationship issue, financial problem, any challenge that anybody is facing, I just accept that God is there in the center of that also, and working through it and bringing gifts through that. I accept that there is comfort for anybody who is going through any challenge, comfort to end the access to the infinite flow, the infinite mind, to know exactly what needs to be done in that situation. There is peace. And I want to say an extra word for the people in Florida on the beach with the building, and know that all is in divine order there. God is working through all of the people there to bring about the highest and best good that they can. And so I'm going to attempt to do what Reverend Sherry does, and that's take a few moments and think of anybody, say their name, who you would want to give some additional blessings to this morning. Think of their name. And as we say their names or think of their names, we know that the divine presence of God, of love, of peace, of harmony, of health and wealth are present. God is present within them and their situations too, right here, right now. And I accept that God is working through those situations to bring about the highest and best that they can. I say thank you to the practitioners and to Nicole and Deb, and for this service, for the opportunity to do this service. I'm so grateful for this. I'm grateful for CLF and how it expresses. I'm grateful for the love and camaraderie and joy that I receive, that all receive from these, just this entity that is CLF. I say thank you. I say thank you for the manifestation of all the prayers. And I know that as I release these words into the law, it is done. And so I release, I let go, and I know. And together we say, and so it is.